Okay. All right, I need a motion to come out of exec session and open up the meeting. That's right. We'll open up the comment. Vinny, second. Okay, Laura. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. We're now in open session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent meditation. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pelletieri. Obviously, we received some news yesterday regarding the governor's budget and educational state aid, and certainly is caused us to call an emergency meeting to come back together on a Saturday morning to kind of review different options and different things. Scenarios changed considerably, but I'm going to have actually Michelle, if you could explain what happened with the budget, okay, what we were anticipating, okay, and maybe a little bit of history of hold harmless and how it was calculated, and then explain where we're at now, and then I'll turn over to Dr. Pelletieri to look at the different options that we're discussing.
Okay. So historically, hold harmless went into effect when the foundation aid formula, they were going to let the formula run, and districts would start getting, the amount that the formula would say that they could get, and any district that was considered getting more than their share would be hold harmless, which for the prior 3 years had meant that you got a minimum increase over your current foundation aid, and that for 2 of those years, I believe it was 3%, and then I think the first year it was around 2.7%. So hold harmless started to mean that it was a 3% minimum increase. So that's what we were anticipating. That's what we were showing in all of our budget presentations, that if we are held harmless, we would get 3% more than we got in foundation aid for the current year.
Michelle, and that's what a lot of our elected officials were sharing with us as well.
Correct.
That it's
correct.
The hold harmless will be returned.
Yes. So to Sachem, we were anticipating that we would be getting $2.8 million more in foundation aid than we did in this current school year. On the governor's initial state aid runs, we were shown as getting a reduction. We were one of the 334 school districts that were going to receive less in foundation aid. And that amount was $1.7 million. But the governor put in place what she was calling a transition adjustment. She cut that amount in half and said, all right, we'll only take $875,000 this year. We'll take the other $875,000 next year. So we were expecting, if we're going to get 3%, we would wipe out that negative $875,000 and be $2.8 million in the positive. We found out on Thursday that was not going to be the case. That's what we started hearing before the aid runs came out yesterday and confirmed that in the governor's definition of hold harmless just meant that you would get what you got last year. So we would get no increase in foundation aid. So that immediately pulled $2.8 million out of our budget. So where we were anticipating that we had a gap of roughly 3.7 or just under $3.8 million, now we have a gap of $6.6 million. And that's what brought us all here today.
Okay. Chris, any questions from the board? Chris, if you could just explain that the process, just so the people in the audience and people in the community understand, we're going to be meeting again on Monday night. And we're going to be meeting again on Tuesday night to adopt. Monday night will be the public forum where people, certainly can come up, and I could speak today if you wanted to, but we'll put all 3 options on the table with details, and then the board will have to pick and choose which option they want to go with. And then Tuesday we'll adopt. All right. So Chris.
President Scott, thank you very much. And yes, I appreciate those folks who are here and those folks who are watching at home as well. So we have been working on scenarios all along in case something like this could happen. We were obviously hoping against it and being led to believe that it wasn't going to happen, but it has, and here we are. And so I see us having 3 options at this point. One would be that we figure out a way to cut through our budget and get that $6.6 million down to zero. And that would mean, I'm not going to go into detail now about it, but that would mean a lot of staff and program reductions across right back where we were before. Another option would be to pierce the cap, and that's not something that's taken lightly by this board or this community. I know that, and we could pierce the cap at a number around CPI, which would be about 3.49. And if we went out at a tax increase of about 3.49, we are looking at being able to utilize some reserves and utilize that additional funds from piercing the cap at 3.49. And again, we would be at a zero deficit. And then lastly, a third option would be to go out at a number around 4.87, in terms of piercing the cap at a 4.87. And that in and of itself would then cover all of the deficit. And we would not nearly need to use any additional reserves beyond the 9.2 million we're using already in order to get down to zero. So those are the three options that we're looking at closely right now.
Questions from the board? Mr. Cerny, no?
Chris, I guess you should be at the one option of 3.49. That would result in how much coming out of the reserves?
Approximately 3.4, 3.6, 3.6 million.
Laura?
And Michelle, just to clarify, the 9.2 that we're taking is going right back in. So we would only be taking around the 3 million if we're pierce the cap at 3.49.
Right. So the 9.2 we appropriated this year, we anticipate replenishing that. So,
Correct.
and we're factoring that into next year's budget already. And then this would be 3.6 million on top of that.
And that would be piercing at the 3.49.
Correct.
All right.
Any other questions? And the only downside to obviously taking additional money at a fund balance is that we have to make it up, and we've tightened things pretty tightly with all of our budget lines, that we may not have after next year a surplus, to the tune of $9.2 million.
Right.
So
So if we go with the 3.49%, we're actually looking at $12.8 million now in appropriated reserves.
that has to
So
be made up.
that would have to be made up.
So in essence, the following year, if next year's runs are worse than this year, we're already looking at a $12 million deficit.
Correct.
Yeah. So we got to be careful. I mean, we have to be fiscally responsible, but we also have to set ourselves up for future years, to weather the storm. And I think that's the scenario changes tremendously with the governor's proposal. We're anticipating $3 million more, and we don't get that, and it changes things drastically, for the board. So, Mike?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else got a chance to see Bob Vecchio from the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association. He did say that he thought boards should be looking at this as not just a one-year thing.
Mhm.
They should be looking at this as a multi-year process now because of this change. I guess this change in formula. So we need to be looking at the impacts on not just what's going to happen in 24, 25, but now 25, 26, 26, 27.
Right. And again, that's the change in the foundation aid based on enrollment. So it's students and the desks. So every district is being told you have to plan accordingly from this point on, that we're basing it solely on enrollment. Your formula is changing, and this is what it's going to be from the future from this point on.
Vinny?
Yeah, just a clarification. So option 3 at the 4.87, that's not utilizing any additional reserves above the 9.2. We're getting all of that 6.6 from the tax levy, right?
It'd be a small amount of reserves.
Like
It would be around $500,000.
About $500,000 in reserves. The rest is coming out of the tax levy. Okay.
Right. And none of those cuts that we would have to make if it fails would have to be made. Yeah. So that would be Sachem as it looks today, versus Sachem minus $3 million, or $6 million. Yeah. So, any other comments, questions? Okay. Any visitors? Was anybody planning on speaking? All right. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday night. Okay. I think we're meeting a little earlier. Is that correct? We doing 6:30? Did we set a time yet for that?
We did not finalize the time, but it seems like for most. Oh my gosh, it seems like for most of us, those that are working, obviously get here about 6:30. So I think 6:30 would be a safe time to have the meeting.
Are we okay with that? At 6:30 on April 22nd. This particular time, any motion to adjourn? That's Laura, and second by Sabrina. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.